But my follow-up question to that is, hockey has been a sport that, in America that's, doesn't have the highest viewership. How can they possibly get this kind of viewership back? How can they get their viewers back? Why?
7-game series just like this are going to help. A team like the Bruins, underdogs in 2 of their 4 series, maybe even the first series with Montreal if you want to take it back that far. But to see a team like this rally the way they did, that will certainly help audiences as well. And the fact that you have a lot of powerhouses now in places like Phoenix, who's made the playoffs 2 years in a row, first time in a long time for them. Nashville, great story this year. Barry Trotz in Nashville, my vote for Coach of the Year. He'll get the Jack Adams Award, I believe. And so markets like this, Nashville, markets that you don't necessarily think of as hockey markets in the States, this is going to help ratings.
Yeah. Without a doubt, I have to agree with you. This series like this will definitely hook hockey fans. It was a thrilling series, plenty of drama around it, plenty of exciting scoring. Games 3 and 4 will certainly help the guys who don't like low-scoring games. And I got to tell you, I started watching hockey for real in this series, and I'm hooked.
There you go.
So now on to our final question for this show that I asked the fans. Obviously, the Vancouver Canucks did not win this series, but back before Game 6, we didn't know that. So I asked them if Vancouver would be to win with all the controversial acts they committed between Burroughs supposedly biting Patrice Bergeron's finger, with Aaron Rome hitting Nathan Horton, with the criticism Luongo made of Tim Thomas's goaltending, all the taunting back and forth between both teams. Would a Vancouver victory be somewhat tainted had they won? Let's see what the fans had to say about that.
I'll tell you what, I think that when the Bruins have played here and they're in the TD Garden, I think that they play much more comfortable. I think that they're able to get in front of Luongo and rattle him early, and he gave up some goals that he normally wouldn't have given up in both of these games in Boston. Whereas at home, I think that the Bruins, number one, they weren't as comfortable, and they really weren't rattling him. In fact, actually, I think that all the games that they played in Vancouver, I think that Luongo saw an awful lot of the puck and not as much of the Bruins as far as screening goes.
I'm telling you, it's the love he feels from the support of his team.
Probably, again, just the fan support. I mean, I know he's got a lot of doubters around the league because he's never won that big thing or whatever, but I mean, I hate to say it, but he is a talented guy. So, I mean, it's probably just the fans again, just getting behind him.
It's hard to say. It probably has a lot to do with, just the atmosphere, and he's got the home crowd supporting him, and probably his routines are a little more set in stone, whereas against, like when he's in a different city, he's kind of got to go on the fly and just try and follow through as much as he can with his routines, but, it's just not possible the same way. Probably a little bit. I mean, Vancouver fans won't see it that way, obviously, but to Bruins fans, it will definitely seem that way. Just kind of, a little weakened, as opposed to if they won it outright with, no controversy and whatnot.
Well, I'm not really, because I'll tell you what, I do look at the Bruins. I'm looking at those 3 games in Vancouver, and I feel that they could have won at least. They could have actually won all of those games, but they should have won at least one.
No. you're always going to get controversy, and you know what? I think overall it takes what it takes in this team, and it'll take it. And if they win it, I mean, both teams have been up and down. It's been ferocious hockey. It's been one of my favorite series in a long time.
Only everywhere but Vancouver. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I was telling my friend the other day, the only travesty worse than a loudmouth team winning would be the Heat winning last night, but they didn't. So hopefully the Vancouver Canucks won't either. Justice being served and all.
And obviously, as I said before, the Canucks did not win this series, as we all know. So, Jake, what's your opinion on this? Would, if Vancouver had won,
I agree with the two middle fans there, fans 2 and 3. I really don't think that the Vancouver victory would have been tainted. This is gamesmanship. There's controversy in almost every playoff series in every sport, if you want to look at it that way. The Burrows bite is controversial for sure. Definitely looked like a bite to me and to many. And so that was the key moment of controversy, I feel, in the series. But that was back in Game 1. You move on. Bergeron certainly couldn't have been classier about the whole thing and how he handled it. And that's gamesmanship. Luongo did say something about Thomas. Thomas didn't say anything back about Luongo. So that's gamesmanship as well, Thomas not reacting. So I don't think a controversy would have been, for me anyway, I don't think it would have been present.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think that some Bruins fans, had the Vancouver Canucks won the series, I think they would have, been a little, upset about it. They would have been like, oh, they weren't good sports about this. There was the biting, the dirty hits, all this and that. But I think that would have died down pretty shortly after. It wouldn't have lasted.
But you never like losing a series, regardless of how you lose it.
Exactly. Regardless of how you lose it, there's always going to be complaints of some kind. They're always going to look for some kind of controversy to blame it on. But that dies down. That always dies down. Never lasts very long. And I think in Boston that they obviously would have said it's slightly tainted. Some people would have obviously said that. Obviously, there was a Boston fan who said probably not. And then obviously Vancouver would have said not at all. Vancouver fans say not at all, not tainted at all. And as for neutral fans, they're just not going to care.
Exactly.
Because their team was not in the series.
And it's interesting to look at it from a different perspective as well, in that the Johnny Boychuk hit, the collision he had with Mason Raymond of Vancouver in Game 7, a lot of people thought that was a dirty play. Looked like a good hockey play to me, but a lot of people thought that was dirty. And so on both sides of the coin, you look at it, both teams could have been called for some penalties that weren't called, some misconducts that weren't called. And I think that had Boston won the series, which they did, obviously that wasn't known when you did the interviews, but there are people in Vancouver who think this thing's going to be a little flawed.
Yeah. And so then, of course, there's other kinds of controversies. You got controversial acts like what the Vancouver Canucks did, and then of course you got controversial calls. We know in the history we got the Patriots, the Tuck rule. We've got was Dave Roberts safe at second in the 2004 ALCS? You got stuff like that. Which do you think produces more? If people are going to complain and say victory is tainted, which do you think makes it more? Which do you think would make it produce more controversy or something like that?
A blown call?
A blown call.
Or as opposed to some criticism, I see. Maybe a blown call, because officials, the referees, and Dan O'Halloran, Stephen Walcom, the Game 7 officials, were outstanding in the playoffs. They were the officials for Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, the rare game where there were no penalties called, Boston and Tampa. So I think the officials did a very good job. But officials, they have targets on their back. They absolutely do, as do umpires in baseball, referees and umpires in football. And so I think a blown call really creates more controversy than almost anything else.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of You Say, We Say. For Jake Saltzman, I am Jesse Mayfield-Sheehan. Congratulations to both the Boston Bruins and Vancouver Canucks for a great Stanley Cup final. It was a thrill to watch, and of course, congratulations to the Boston Bruins for their first Stanley Cup victory since 1972. I am Jesse Mayfield-Sheehan. Thank you for watching.